So, there is this ancient Islamic prophecy that has been quoted by classical scholars, feared by global governments, and honestly, completely misunderstood by millions of people. It speaks of black flags rising from a region called Khorasan, it describes an unstoppable army, and it speaks of a direct connection to the Imam Mahdi. Now, over the past 2 decades or so, this very prophecy has been heavily weaponized. You've had militant groups literally raising black flags and declaring to the whole world, hey, we are the fulfillment of this prophecy, come join us. And tragically, millions of sincere, searching people have just been caught up and confused by this. Some have even lost their lives because of that confusion. Well, today, we're going to cut through all of that noise. In this explainer, we are going right back to the original sources, the authentic texts, and classical scholarship, so we can finally separate the historical facts from modern militant propaganda. So, what does this all mean? Who are the black flags really? That is the central question we've got to ask ourselves today. Are we looking at a sign that was actually already fulfilled way back in history? Is it a prophecy being dangerously misused by modern groups for their own gain? Or is this massive event entirely waiting for us in the future? Let's peel back the layers and find out. All right, here's our roadmap for this explainer. We're going to cover the exact words of the prophecy, the true geography of Greater Khorasan, debunking the militant claims, historical, scholarly views, the region's geopolitics today, and finally, some crucial spiritual lessons for believers. Okay, jumping into section 1, the exact words explained. We're looking at the primary sources without any embellishment. Look, rule number 1 here. Before interpreting anything, we absolutely must know what the original text actually says, completely stripping away any modern political framing. The primary narration we're looking at is found in classical collections. Think Sunan ibn Majah and Musnad Ahmad. The Prophet explicitly described it like this: if you see the black flags coming from Khorasan, then go to them, even if you have to crawl over snow. For among them is the Caliph of Allah, the Mahdi. Other narrations add that they're going to come from the east and that literally nothing will stop them until they are raised in Jerusalem. That is exactly what was said. Everything else you hear? That's just human interpretation. Now, what's super fascinating about verifying these texts is the actual science behind it. You see, the authenticity of this specific narration is actually a matter of genuine scholarly debate. The grading system for Hadith basically works in 3 main tiers. You've got Sahih, which is the absolute highest standard, Hasan, which is acceptable, and Da'if, which wins weak. Leading scholars of the 20th century, giants like Sheikh al-Albani and Sheikh al-Arnat, examined these narrations rigorously, and their conclusions were highly nuanced. While the general concept of an Eastern army carrying black flags does have supporting evidence, the most dramatic versions, like the specific mandate to crawl over snow, well, those have weaknesses in their chains of narration. So the absolute crucial takeaway here is that we have to apply profound scholarly caution. We literally cannot build life-or-death ideological movements based on narrations that the scholars themselves are debating. Moving right along to section 2, where is Greater Khorasan? And spoiler alert, it's way more than just modern-day Afghanistan. To truly understand this prophecy, you have to understand the geography. Knowing the historical reality of this region completely prevents us from just buying into simplistic modern interpretations. Greater Khorasan, as understood by classical Islamic geographers, was absolutely massive. We're talking roughly the size of Western Europe. It encompassed modern-day Afghanistan, northeastern Iran, Tajikistan, Uzbekistan, and Turkmenistan. And listen, in the classical era, this wasn't some peripheral backwater region. No way. This was the intellectual and cultural heartland of the Islamic world. The great city of Nishapur produced Imam al-Ghazali. Bukhara produced Imam Bukhari. So reducing Khorasan to just one modern country or tying it to one modern militant group completely ignores the extraordinary, vast history of this entire region. Which brings us to section 3, debunking the militant claims. We're talking about groups like Al-Qaeda, ISIS, and the Taliban. All right, we really need to confront the elephant in the room head-on. Before we analyze exactly how this specific prophecy has been so dangerously misappropriated by modern groups, let's lock down the strict prophetic criteria. Based on the accepted narrations, the true black flags have very specific characteristics. First, they emerge from the east. Second, they have unstoppable momentum. Third, their ultimate destination is Jerusalem. Fourth, and this is absolutely critical, they are directly connected to the Mahdi, like he is right there among them. Fifth, they act as a fighting force. And sixth, they are people of extraordinary steadfastness and character. Now, when we juxtapose modern militant actions against these strict prophetic criteria we just talked about, the claims completely fall apart. I mean, think about it.
Anyone can go out, buy a piece of black cloth, raise it up, and declare themselves the fulfillment of a prophecy, but claiming it definitely doesn't make it true. The prophetic criteria strictly require the Mahdi to be present, and no credible scholar accepts that the leaders of these militant groups are the Mahdi, who, by the way, has a verifiable lineage tracing back to the Prophet's daughter, Fatima. Furthermore, the true Mahdi fights with profound justice, he protects the innocent, and he embodies the Sunnah. The terror, the mass murder, and the destruction we've seen from modern groups like ISIS are literally the exact opposite of the authentic prophetic descriptions.
And listen, this isn't just an observation, it is the absolute consensus of mainstream Sunni scholarship. Over 120 senior Muslim scholars from around the globe, including from the highly prestigious Al-Azhar University, along with brilliant jurists like Sheikh Abdullah bin Baya, issue detailed, systematic refutations of these militant groups. The scholarly verdict here is completely unanimous. These groups are absolutely not the fulfillment of the Black Flag's prophecy. They're simply exploiting eschatological imagery, end times concepts, to boost recruitment and create a false sense of religious legitimacy.
Let's dive into Section 4. What do scholars say? The Abbasid Revolution and the Mahdi.
So let's pivot for a second and look at what classical giants, scholars like Ibn Kathir and Al-Qurtubi, actually concluded about the timeline of this sign in Islamic history. Scholarly positions generally fall into three main camps. Camp 1 suggests the prophecy was actually already historically fulfilled during the Abbasid Revolution back in 747 CE. Ironically enough, the Abbasids basically ran an 8th century PR campaign. They specifically adopted black flags to capitalize on these very narrations so they could launch a new caliphate. Wild, right? Then you have Camp 2, which suggests it was partially fulfilled by the Abbasids, but the final, complete fulfillment is still waiting for the Mahdi. And finally, Camp 3 believes the whole thing is entirely in the future. But notice the common thread here. All reputable scholars agree that the complete, ultimate fulfillment absolutely requires the presence of the currently absent Imam Mahdi. Therefore, it is definitively not being fulfilled by anyone acting today.
On to Section 5, Geopolitics of the region. Let's talk about the enduring significance of Central Asia.
Now, even though the prophecy isn't currently being fulfilled by any active group, we absolutely have to acknowledge that this geographic region remains incredibly significant and volatile on the world stage right now. I mean, just look at the timeline of events, from the Abbasid Revolution in 747 CE, sweeping through the 19th century Great Game between warring global empires, right up to the 2021 NATO withdrawal from Afghanistan. The very region the Prophet named 1,400 years ago is today one of the most contested, volatile, and strategically crucial areas on the entire planet. Its stubborn resistance to external control and its unique geopolitical positioning make it a central player in global events. Many thinkers point out that this strategic centrality is definitely no coincidence. It marks it as a key region for whatever world events unfold leading up to the major signs.
And finally, Section 6, Spiritual Lessons for Believers. How to navigate prophecy with critical thinking. So this brings us to the real core takeaway of our explainer today. How should a sincere believer actually process these end times narrations right now without falling victim to manipulation or propaganda? Well, it really comes down to 4 practical steps. Step 1, learn proper Hadith literacy. You really need to know the difference between a strong and a weak narration so you aren't easily swayed by some random social media post. Step 2, be deeply suspicious of self-declared prophecies. Anyone using religion to bypass your critical thinking is incredibly dangerous. Allah gave you a mind, so use it, Step 3, wait for the scholars to recognize the Mahdi. The real Mahdi's emergence will be validated by scholarly consensus, not by a slick military PR campaign. And step 4, actually scratch that, this is the most important one. Focus on personal worship and justice. Your job isn't to play detective and hunt for the Mahdi. Your job is to follow the Sunnah, build up your community, establish justice, and rely on the scholars. If there's literally one thing you take away from this explainer, let it be this phrase right here. The real Mahdi will be known by his character, not his flag. True prophetic fulfillment is validated by divine criteria and recognized by the scholarly community. It is absolutely, unequivocally not established by someone simply raising a piece of black cloth out in the desert.
So, I'm going to leave you with this final thought to really chew on. Are you seeking truth through careful, grounded scholarship, or are you just chasing flags? The signs are real, for sure, and they deserve our profound respect and study. But they require our patience, not our desperation. We've got to hold to the scholars and worship with genuine sincerity. I'll conclude with a beautiful prayer from our sources. O Allah, show us truth as truth and grant us the ability to follow it, and show us falsehood as falsehood and grant us the ability to avoid it. O Allah, make our hearts firm upon your religion. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer today. Keep learning, and I'll see you next time.